A being whose power dwarfs even the Chaos Gods themselves has arrived in Warhammer 40K, and it's not here to fight. It's here to judge whether this entire universe deserves to exist at all. Can the Imperium, the Eldar, and the Chaos Gods convince the living Tribunal that a galaxy built on endless suffering and war has any right to survive? The Eye of Terror had existed for 10,000 years, a wound in space where reality bled into madness. Navigators avoided it. Psychers shielded their minds from its whispers. The Imperium built fortress worlds around its edges, eternal sentinels against the darkness within. But on this day, something changed. Something that made even the Chaos Gods pause in their eternal scheming. Reality did not tear. It did not break or shatter or burn. It simply stopped being real. Across 3 million cubic light years, the laws of physics ceased to function. Gravity became optional. Time flowed backward, forward, and sideways simultaneously. Light moved in, curves that had no mathematical explanation. And in the center of this impossible space, 3 faces appeared. Each face was the size of a solar system. One was covered in scales of pure gold, its eyes closed in meditation. Another blazed with silver fire, its gaze fixed and judging. The third was hidden behind a mask of absolute darkness, revealing nothing. The fourth side of its head remained a cosmic void, whose nature even gods dared not contemplate. They did not speak, yet every psychic mind in the galaxy heard the same message, delivered not in words but in pure understanding that bypassed language entirely. This reality stands trial for crimes against the cosmic balance. On Terra, within the throne room of the Imperial Palace, the Emperor's presence flared. For the first time in living memory, the Golden Throne system screamed with power readings that exceeded their maximum tolerances. Tech priests fell to their knees as their augmented minds struggled to process the impossible data flooding their sensors. The Custodes tightened their grip on Guardian spears, though they knew instinctively that no weapon forged by mortal or immortal hands could threaten what had just arrived. In the High Lord's chamber, emergency klaxons wailed. Hololithic displays showed the same incomprehensible readings from every corner of the Imperium. Astropaths collapsed, blood streaming from their eyes as they tried to comprehend the psychic pressure emanating from the Eye of Terror. No, not from the Eye. From something that had appeared above it. Something that made the Eye of Terror look like a candle flame next to a star. Lord Commander Kovash, Inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus, stood before the tactical display with hands clenched behind his back. He had faced daemons. He had stared into the warp and survived. He had ordered the deaths of billions to save trillions. But this was beyond anything in his 5 centuries of experience. "What are we looking at?" demanded Lord Admiral Quarren, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "First reports are coming in from astropathic relay stations across the segmentum," replied a junior officer, her hands shaking as she read the data scrolls. All described the same phenomenon. 3 faces, each impossibly large. No warp signature. No energy readings that match any known classification. And my lord, the message. Every psyker in the Imperium received it simultaneously. "This reality stands trial," Kovash repeated quietly. "Trial implies judgment. Judgment implies a judge with authority to render verdict." He turned to face the assembled High Lords. "We must assume this entity has the power to enforce whatever verdict it delivers. In the warp, the Chaos Gods experienced something they had not felt since their birth from mortal emotion. Fear. Not the fear they inspired in others, but genuine terror for their own existence. Khorne's realm of endless battle fell silent, as even the most frenzied warriors ceased their combat. Tiench's impossible crystal maze stopped shifting as the architect of fate contemplated a future it could not predict or control. Nurgle's garden of diseases withered as entropy itself seemed to pause. Slaaneish's palace of excess emptied as even the most devoted followers felt their desires drain away in the face of absolute cosmic authority. The entity called itself the Living Tribunal, though no mortal mind had spoken that name yet. It existed beyond their comprehension, servant of the one above all who stood beyond all realities. Where the Chaos Gods were born from emotion and sustained by belief, the living tribunal simply was, unchanging and absolute, the instrument through which multiversal law itself was enforced. Its three visible faces each served a purpose. Equity saw all perspectives equally, weighing every viewpoint without bias. Necessity understood what must be done, regardless of desire or morality. Vengeance recorded every transgression, every violation of cosmic balance, and demanded payment for crimes against reality itself. The fourth side remained hidden, a void whose function defied comprehension. And this galaxy, this tiny corner of one universe among infinite possibilities, had committed so many crimes. Kovash's fleet translated from the warp at the edge of the phenomenon 6 hours later. 12 capital ships, 300 escort vessels, and a crew of 4 million souls. The largest rapid response force the Imperium could assemble on such short notice. As their Geller fields collapsed and they emerged into real space, every sensor on every ship immediately overloaded. "Emperor, protect us," whispered the fleet's navigator, her third eye weeping blood as it tried to perceive what floated before them. The three visible faces regarded the Imperial fleet with a tension that felt like the weight of galaxies pressing down on their souls. When the living tribunal spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through hull plating and human bone with equal ease. "Vessels of mankind, you approach the seat of judgment. State your purpose." Kovash stepped forward in the fleet's command center, knowing somehow that the entity could see him despite the distance and the armored walls surrounding him. "I am Inquisitor Lord Kovash of the God Emperor's Holy Inquisition. I come to understand your purpose and your authority. We are the living tribunal, servant of the one above all who stands beyond all realities. By that authority, we maintain balance across the multiverse. This universe has been flagged for review. Initial assessment indicates severe violations of cosmic law." "What violations?" Kovash demanded, his voice steady despite the terror clawing at his mind. "By what right do you judge us?" The response was not words, but visions, forced directly into the minds of every person in the fleet. They saw their galaxy from outside, from a perspective no mortal was meant to witness. They saw 4 massive tumors of unreality pulsing within the warp. The Chaos Gods revealed not as mighty entities, but as cancerous growths that should not exist. They saw the Emperor, a blinding light chained to a throne, artificially sustained through the daily sacrifice of 1,000 psychers. They saw 10,000 years of war, of planets burned, of species driven to extinction, of suffering without end or purpose. 4 entities corrupt causality itself, the living tribunal pronounced. Their existence violates fundamental laws. They feed on suffering and perpetuate it to sustain themselves. One being enslaves trillions through forced faith, preventing natural evolution. Countless species war without purpose beyond the continuation of war. This reality is sick. We fight to survive? Kovash replied, forcing the words past lips that wanted to scream. The threats we face, you cannot understand. The Chaos Gods would consume us if we showed weakness. The Xenos would exterminate us if we lowered our guard. The Emperor's sacrifice maintains the only thing keeping humanity from extinction, the Astronomicon. We understand perfectly, came the response. That is why you stand trial rather than facing immediate correction. The question is not whether you suffer. The question is whether your suffering serves any purpose beyond its own perpetuation. Before Kovash could respond, the living tribunal demonstrated its power, not as a threat, but as a statement of capability. Reality paused. Across an entire segmentum, billions of people simply froze. Mid-action, warriors stopped mid-swing. Bullets hung in the air. Thoughts ceased halfway through formation. For those experiencing it, subjective time continued. They existed in perfect isolation, unable to move, unable to scream, aware only of their own consciousness trapped in a moment that would not end. The pause lasted 3 seconds. For those within it, centuries passed in solitary awareness. When time resumed, every person in that segmentum collapsed. Billions of minds shattered simultaneously. Those who survived would never be the same, haunted by the memory of eternity experienced in an instant. The message was clear. Resistance was not merely futile, it was impossible. The living tribunal could rewrite reality with a thought. It could pause time itself. What hope did guns and ships and even gods have against such power? Kovash stood in the command center of his flagship, watching his crew struggle to process what they had witnessed. The tactical displays showed the segmentum in chaos. Entire worlds going dark as their populations struggled with minds damaged beyond any Medicae's ability to heal. And this was just a demonstration, a warning of what the living tribunal could do if it chose to act. Send word to Terra. Kovash ordered, his voice hoarse. Tell the High Lords that we face a threat beyond any classification. Tell them that the Emperor himself must speak. Because if this entity decides we are guilty, I do not believe anything in our arsenal can stop the sentence from being carried out. The living tribunal waited, patient as only a cosmic constant could be. It had judged countless realities. It had erased universes that violated cosmic law. It had restored balance to the multiverse time and again across infinite iterations. This galaxy was simply one more case to be examined, weighed, and sentenced according to the laws that governed all existence. The trial had begun. The Emperor's response came through channels that had not been used in 10,000 years. Across the Imperium, astropaths received the same message simultaneously, delivered with such force that many did not survive the experience. Those who did spoke with voices not their own, their mouths forming words in a language that predated human civilization itself. The God Emperor of mankind requests formal hearing before the Cosmic Tribunal. We invoke rights recognized across multiversal law, the accused's right to present defense before sentence is rendered. The living tribunal's three visible faces shifted, considering. Across the multiverse, such requests were rare. Most realities accepted judgment without protest, understanding that cosmic law existed beyond mortal comprehension or negotiation. But occasionally, a universe would fight for its existence. These cases were always the most interesting. Your request is acknowledged. You may present defense, gather your evidence, and witnesses. You have 7 solar rotations to prepare your case. On Terra, the High Lords convened in emergency session. Around the massive table sat the most powerful individuals in the Imperium. The Master of the Administratum, the Fabricator General of Mars, the Grand Master of Assassins, the Ecclesiarch, and a dozen others who controlled the fate of trillions. At the head of the table sat an empty throne, representing the Emperor himself, though all knew his consciousness observed through means beyond mortal understanding. We cannot win through force, stated Lord Commander Kovash, still recovering from his encounter with the living tribunal. I have witnessed its power firsthand. It paused time itself across an entire segmentum. Our weapons, our ships, even our faith, all mean nothing against such capability. Then we must win through words, replied the Ecclesiarch, his ancient face lined with worry. We must convince this entity that our existence serves a greater purpose, that our suffering is not meaningless. And how do we argue that? Demanded the Fabricator General, his mechanical voice harsh through Vox grills. 10,000 years of endless war. Billions dead in service to an emperor who cannot leave his throne. Entire worlds burned to ash to prevent corruption. By what measure can we claim our civilization is worth preserving? The chamber fell silent. It was a question none had truly considered before. The Imperium's brutality was accepted as necessity, its cruelties justified by the threats it faced. But explaining that to an entity that existed beyond such concerns, that was a challenge unlike any they had faced. We are not alone in this trial, Kovash finally said. The entity spoke of this entire reality, not just humanity. The Xenos face the same judgment we do. Within the Black Library, the hidden repository of Eldar knowledge, Eldrad Ulthron experienced a vision of such clarity it drove him to his knees. The ancient Farseer had seen countless possible futures, navigated infinite branching paths of destiny. But this This was beyond even his vast comprehension. He saw the three visible faces of judgment, and the void that was the fourth. He saw the galaxy weighed and found wanting. He saw the potential for complete erasure, every soul that had ever lived simply deleted from existence as if they had never been. "We must speak with the humans," he told the other Farseers assembled around him. "For once, our survival depends on unity, not division." "The Maquis?" scoffed one of the younger seers. "They are barely better than animals. What could they possibly contribute?" "They have something we lost long ago," Eldrad replied quietly. "They still believe their suffering has meaning. They still have hope, however misguided. And hope, genuine hope, might be the only argument that can sway a cosmic judge." The message reached Terra 3 days later, delivered through channels so secret that most of the High Lords did not know they existed. The Eldar proposed a meeting, a gathering of all major species to coordinate their defense. It was unprecedented. The Imperium's default response to Xenos was extermination. But these were not normal circumstances. "It could be a trap," warned the Grand Master of Assassins. "It could be our only chance," countered Kovash. "The Tribunal judges this entire galaxy, not just humanity. If we face extinction, we face it together." The meeting took place on a neutral moon at the edge of the Damocles Gulf. The Imperium sent Kovash with a contingent of Grey Knights. The Eldar sent Eldrad with a council of Farseers. Even the Tau arrived, their ethereals curious about this threat that made even the Imperium seek alliance. And in the shadows, watching but not participating, Necron tomb ships hung in the void. The Silent King himself, observing proceedings through remote sensors. "I never thought I would stand in the same room as a Maquis Inquisitor without weapons drawn," Eldrad said, his ancient eyes studying Kovash with genuine interest. "I never thought I would need to," Kovash replied. "But the enemy of my enemy becomes my ally when facing extinction." They shared information, comparing notes on what they had witnessed and experienced. The Tau described how their border worlds had felt the Tribunal's presence like a weight pressing down on their souls. The Eldar spoke of how even their gods, what remained of them, had gone silent in terror. Kovash detailed the segmentum that had been paused, the billions of minds shattered by just 3 seconds of the Tribunal's attention. It asked if our suffering serves any purpose beyond its own continuation. Kovash said, "That is the question we must answer. Does this galaxy deserve to exist? The Tribunal sees only the violence." Eldrad mused. It does not see the why behind the violence. It does not understand that we fight because the alternative is worse. "Then we must make it understand," replied the Say. "Tau ethereal. We must present evidence of what this galaxy would become without our struggles." The formal hearing convened at the edge of the Eye of Terror, where the living Tribunal maintained its vigil. A platform materialized in the void, constructed from solidified space-time itself, large enough to hold representatives from every major faction. The Imperium brought not just Kovash, but representatives from the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Ecclesiarchy, and the Astra Militarum. The Eldar came in force, Craftworld and Dark Eldar setting aside their hatred for this one moment. Even an Orc war boss was present, confused but sensing that something important was happening. The living Tribunal's 3 visible faces regarded them all with expressions that revealed nothing. The fourth side, that cosmic void, seemed to pulse with awareness beyond comprehension. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "This hearing will determine the fate of your reality. Present your defense. Explain why a universe built on suffering and war deserves to continue existing." But before anyone could speak, the Tribunal continued, and what it said made even the bravest among them feel their courage falter. "First, you will hear the prosecution. You will understand the crimes for which you stand accused." The visions began again, but this time they were not brief flashes. They were comprehensive, detailed, brutal in their honesty. The Tribunal showed them their own galaxy from its perspective, and what they saw broke something fundamental in those who witnessed it. They saw the war in heaven, the ancient conflict between the Old Ones and the Necrons that had shattered the galaxy's original peaceful state. They saw the birth of Slaanesh, the Eldar's fall, An entire civilization consumed by its own excess birthing a god of depravity. They saw the Emperor's crusade, worlds brought to compliance through fire and blood, dissent crushed beneath armored boots. They saw the Horus, heresy, brother turning against brother, the Imperium tearing itself apart. They saw 10,000 years of the Emperor's slow death, 1,000 psychers sacrificed daily to maintain a corpse's half-life on a golden throne. They saw exterminatus events, dozens of them, worlds burned to ash because they could not be saved. They saw the Inquisition's purges, millions executed for the crime of witnessing daemon incursions. They saw the Adeptus Mechanicus's slavery, human minds stripped away and replaced with programming, servitors created from those deemed expendable. They saw the black ships, taking psychers from their families, most dying in training or sacrificed to the Emperor, the survivors facing lives of constant danger and suspicion. They saw the Drukhari, raiding real space for slaves to torture in Camorra, feeding on suffering to stave off Slaanesha's hunger. They saw orc wogs, entire species exterminated for sport. They saw Tyranid hive fleets consuming biomass, leaving dead worlds in their wake. They saw Necron tomb worlds awakening, determined to reclaim a galaxy that had moved on without them. And through it all, they saw the Chaos Gods, feeding on every negative emotion, growing stronger with each act of violence, each moment of despair, each corrupt thought. A cycle that could never end because the participants sustained the very threats they fought against. These are your crimes, the living tribunal pronounced. 10 million years of warfare. Countless species extinct. Trillions of sentient beings born only to suffer and die in conflicts they did not choose. 4 entities of pure corruption that poison not just this reality, but threaten to spread to others. One being who claims godhood while sacrificing his own species to maintain his power. This is not civilization. This is not evolution. This is a cancer that metastasizes. The silence that followed was absolute. What defense could be offered against such complete condemnation? Every crime listed was true. Every atrocity documented was accurate. The tribunal had not exaggerated or misrepresented. It had simply shown them their own history, unfiltered by propaganda or justification. Kovash stood slowly, feeling the weight of 10,000 years of imperial history pressing down on his shoulders. "Everything you have shown us is true," he said, his voice steady despite the horror still echoing in his mind. "We do not deny our crimes. We cannot. But you have shown us only what we have done, not why we did it." The golden face of equity opened its eyes for the first time, regarding Kovash with attention that felt like standing before a sun. "Explain. You showed us the war in heaven, but not what came before it," Kovash continued. "You showed us the Emperor's crusade, but not the age of strife that preceded it, when humanity nearly went extinct, scattered across the stars without communication or unity. You showed us exterminatus, but not the alternative. Chaos, corruption spreading from world to world, turning entire populations into daemon hosts. You judge us for our cruelty," Eldrad added, stepping forward. "But you do not understand the cruelty of our enemies. The Chaos Gods do not simply kill. They torture souls for eternity. They corrupt reality itself. Every moment we fight them, we prevent infinite suffering for countless trillions." The Tau Ethereal spoke next. "We are young compared to these ancient species. We see this galaxy with fresh eyes. And what we see is not senseless violence, but desperate survival. Every species fights because the alternative is extinction, or something worse. Even the orc warboss contributed, his simple words carrying unexpected weight. "We fight, 'cause that's what we's made for. But we's also protect our boys. We's got Kultor, got gods, got purpose. We's not just violence. We's people too." The living tribunal listened without interruption, its 3 visible faces absorbing every word. When the last speaker finished, it responded with a question that cut to the heart of their defense. "You argue necessity. You claim your cruelties prevent greater suffering. But is this truth or rationalization? After 10,000 years of the Emperor's rule, humanity is no closer to peace. After millions of years of warfare, this galaxy spirals ever deeper into chaos. Your methods do not solve the problems you claim to fight. They perpetuate them. It was Eldrad who answered, his voice heavy with the wisdom of 10,000 years. You are correct. Our methods do not solve the problems. They delay them. We are not fighting to win. We are fighting to survive long enough that perhaps someday, someone will find a solution we cannot see. And if that day never comes, the Tribunal asked, if this cycle continues forever, suffering without end, what justification remains? Before anyone could answer, a presence made itself known that shocked even the living Tribunal into momentary silence. From Terra, across impossible distance, through channels that should not exist, the Emperor himself spoke, not through a conduit or intermediary, but directly, his consciousness reaching across the galaxy to address the cosmic judge. His voice, when it came, carried the weight of 10 millennia, of suffering, of sacrifice, of desperate hope maintained against all evidence. I am guilty of every crime you name. I built an empire on conquest and maintained it through fear. I sacrificed billions to save trillions. I claimed to be humanity's guardian while chaining them to eternal war. But I also preserved the species when extinction seemed certain. I maintained hope when despair would have been easier. I made myself the target of every horror this galaxy could produce so that others might survive. The three visible faces of the living Tribunal focused entirely on this consciousness that dared address them as an equal. The void of the fourth side seemed to deepen, as if listening. You are dying, the Tribunal observed. Your physical form fails. Your consciousness fragments. Within centuries, you will be gone, and your Imperium will collapse without you. Yes, the Emperor agreed. And that is why I ask not for my own salvation, but for time. Grant this galaxy the chance to survive my death. Let them prove they can evolve beyond dependence on my sacrifice. If they cannot, if they fall to chaos or Xenos or their own violence, then your judgment will have been proven correct. But give them the chance to prove you wrong. The request hung in the void, a desperate plea wrapped in the dignity of acceptance. The Emperor did not beg. He did not claim innocence. He simply asked for what he had always fought for. Time for humanity to become something more than it currently was. The living Tribunal deliberated, its three visible faces conferring in ways beyond mortal understanding. The fourth side pulsed with incomprehensible energy. Equity weighed all perspectives. Necessity calculated all possibilities. Vengeance tallied all debts. And in that moment of cosmic judgment, everyone present understood that their fate, and the fate of the entire galaxy, balanced on the edge of annihilation. The deliberation lasted 7 hours by standard Imperial timekeeping, though those present experienced it as an eternity compressed into heartbeats. The three visible faces of the living Tribunal remained motionless, their expressions revealing nothing as they weighed the arguments presented. The fourth side, that cosmic void, pulsed with rhythms that defied comprehension. The representatives from across the galaxy waited in silence, barely daring to breathe, knowing that their next breath might be their last if the verdict went against them. Then the warp exploded. Not figuratively, but literally. The Eye of Terror, that ancient wound in reality, erupted with energy that dwarfed any chaos incursion in recorded history. From its depths poured something that should not exist, something that made even the living Tribunal's faces turn toward it with what might have been surprise. The four Chaos Gods had manifested simultaneously. This was unprecedented, impossible under normal circumstances. Their true essences could not exist in real space without catastrophic dimensional collapse. But the living Tribunal's presence, stabilizing reality through its mere existence, created conditions that allowed what should never be. It was a violation of fundamental warp mechanics, sustained only by the cosmic entity's power anchoring the fabric of space-time itself. Not through avatars or greater daemons, but as themselves, their true forms pressing through the barrier between immaterium and real space, with force that cracked the foundations of physics. Khorne appeared as an impossibly vast figure of brass and blood, his rage a palpable force that caused stars to flicker and die. Tzientch writhed with 1,000 forms at once, a constantly shifting mass of possibility and change. Nurgle's rotting bulk spread disease across the void itself, entropy made manifest. Slaanesh blazed with terrible beauty, excess incarnate, desire without limit or shame. Their combined presence shattered the minds of lesser beings instantly. Guardsmen aboard distant ships went mad, tearing at their own flesh. Tau warriors collapsed, their orderly minds unable to process such fundamental wrongness. Even the Eldar, who had lived with the shadow of Slaanesh for 10 millennia, felt their souls strain toward the waiting maw of she who thirsts. Only the living tribunal remained unaffected, its 3 visible faces regarding the Chaos Gods with the same impassive judgment it had shown all others. The void of the fourth side seemed to expand, as if preparing to consume. "You should not be here," it stated simply. "Your nature is confined to the Imperium. This violation of dimensional boundaries adds to your crimes." Khorne's laughter was the sound of 1,000,000,000,000 skulls cracking. "We care not for your laws, Judge. We are beyond law, beyond restriction. We are the truth of this universe made manifest. We are eternal." Tzientch's voices spoke in harmony and discord. "We have seen futures, where you judge us, and futures where we corrupt you. All paths lead to our persistence." "We are inevitable," Nurgle added, his voice gentle, despite the horror it represented. "All things decay, all things fall. We are merely the acceptance of that truth. We are desire," Slaanesh whispered, the words caressing reality like fingers on skin. "And you, living tribunal, you desire order. Is that not itself an excess? A desire taken to its ultimate extreme? The Chaos Gods began their assault, not with weapons but with corruption itself. Tzientch wove impossible futures where the tribunal's judgment favored chaos, creating paradoxes that should have trapped even a cosmic entity. Khorne manifested armies that existed in quantum superposition, simultaneously real and unreal, challenging the tribunal's ability to enforce physical law. Nurgle spread a plague designed to infect concepts rather than flesh, targeting the very idea of judgment itself. Slaanesh attempted to overwhelm the tribunal, with infinite sensation, trying to prove that even cosmic law could be perverted through excess. The living tribunal's response was immediate and absolute. With a gesture from its golden face, Tzientch's paradoxes simply ceased to exist. They were not solved or unraveled. They were retroactively prevented from ever being created. The silver face blazed with light that burned away Khorne's impossible armies, reducing them to less than memory. The dark face opened for the first time, revealing a void that consumed Nurgle's conceptual plague, devouring entropy itself. And when Slaanesh pressed her seduction against the tribunal's consciousness, she found something she had never encountered before. Absolute immunity, born not from resistance, but from fundamental incompatibility. The Chaos Gods recoiled, shocked. In their own realm, they were supreme. Even in real space, they had never faced a power that could simply deny their existence. But the living tribunal was not from this reality. It operated by rules that superseded even the warp's corrupted physics. "You have proven the prosecution's case," the tribunal stated. "You are corruption incarnate. You violate the fundamental laws of reality. Your existence alone justifies the erasure of this universe." "Then erase us!" Khorne roared. "We welcome the attempt." "We are born from emotion itself. While sentient beings feel rage, we exist. While they fear death, we persist. While they desire, we grow stronger. To destroy us, you must destroy every thinking mind in this galaxy. And if you do that," Tzientch added, his forms coalescing into something almost reasonable, "you prove that you are no better than us. A destroyer of life, a tyrant imposing order through annihilation. It was a trap, elegantly constructed despite its brutality. The Chaos Gods had demonstrated their corruption beyond any doubt, but in doing so, they had also revealed the terrible cost of removing them. To erase the Chaos Gods required erasing their source, sapient emotion itself. Kovash stepped forward despite every instinct screaming at him to flee from the manifested chaos gods. They speak truth, but not the whole truth. Yes, they are born from emotion, but they are not inevitable results of emotion. They are cancer, mutation, emotion twisted into its worst possible form. In other realities, Eldrad added, his voice strained from maintaining psychic shields against Slanesh's pull. Do thinking beings exist without birthing such entities? Does consciousness always create such corruption? The living tribunal's three visible faces turned toward the Eldar Farseer. Across infinite realities, consciousness takes infinite forms. In most, emotion does not create entities such as these. This universe's warp is uniquely unstable, uniquely prone to corruption. It is a flaw in the foundation of your reality itself. A flaw we did not create, Kovash insisted. The warp's instability predates every current species. We inherited this problem. We fight against it with every resource we possess, and that is precisely why observable patterns must be considered, came a new voice, cold and mechanical. From the darkness beyond the platform, a Necron vessel approached. Its hull was unmarked by battle, pristine in a way that spoke of technology so advanced that conflict itself could not touch it. From its depths emerged a figure that radiated authority despite being nothing more than an animated skeleton of living metal. The Silent King had come to testify. Even the Chaos Gods fell silent as Sarek, last of the Triarch, ruler of the Necron dynasties, approached the living tribunal. His mechanical eyes, burning with emerald fire, held none of the fear or desperation that marked the other witnesses. He had seen the birth and death of species. He had made bargains with star gods and won. He faced cosmic judgment with the same calculating patience he brought to all things. I am ancient, Sarek began, his voice resonating through communication devices rather than organic vocal cords. I have watched this galaxy for 60 million years. I have seen its cycles of growth and destruction. And I tell you, Living Tribunal, that what you see as criminal chaos, I see as observable pattern born from ancient mistakes. The three visible faces focused on him with interest. The void of the fourth side seemed to lean closer. Explain. This galaxy is a crucible, the Silent King continued. Not by design I approve of, but by the consequences of ancient wars my people helped create. The war in heaven shattered the warp's stability. The old ones weaponized psychic species. My ancestors bargained with the Cetan and nearly destroyed all organic life. These actions created the conditions from which the Chaos Gods emerged. The warp's corruption is a wound we inflicted. You defend the ruinous powers? Kovash asked in disbelief. They seek to corrupt all life, including yours. I defend nothing, Sarek replied, his mechanical voice carrying no emotion. I seek the total elimination of the warp and everything within it. I have spent millions of years developing technologies to suppress, contain, and eventually erase the Imperium entirely. The pylons of Cadia were my people's work. The dolmen gates that allow us to travel without touching the warp. Also, our creation. I despise chaos more than any organic being possibly could. He turned back to the living tribunal. But I recognize observable reality. The extreme conditions the Chaos Gods create have forged species with unique capabilities. Humanity developed psychers who can resist corruption through sheer will. The Eldar learned discipline through the trauma of their fall. Even the young Tau grow cautious as they learn what darkness exists. Remove the pressure entirely through total erasure, and you remove the forge. Species that survive this galaxy possess adaptation capabilities found nowhere else in your multiverse. You argue that suffering produces valuable results, the tribunal stated. I argue that this galaxy functions according to the damage inflicted upon it millions of years ago, Sarek corrected. The Chaos Gods are tumors born from that ancient wound. They are not natural. They are not beneficial. They are consequences of catastrophic mistakes. But those consequences have shaped every species here in ways that may have value beyond this single reality. The question becomes whether the products of this damaged crucible justify the cost of maintaining it, or whether mercy demands its complete erasure and a fresh start. The argument was monstrous in its implications, yet it carried a terrible logic. If suffering served as catalyst for unique evolutionary paths, if the galaxy's brutality created capabilities that could not exist otherwise, did that justify its continuation? No, said a voice from among the Imperial delegation. A simple guardsman, his face scarred from battle, his uniform marking him as a veteran of the Cadian regiments. He should not have been allowed to speak, should have been silenced by his superiors, but something in his voice carried authority that transcended rank. I have fought for 30 years. The guardsman continued, his words simple, but weighted with lived experience. I have watched my friends die. I have killed Xenos and heretics and traitors. I have seen horrors that drove better men to madness. And I tell you, Cosmic Judge, that my suffering has taught me nothing, except that suffering is terrible and should be stopped. He stepped forward. This insignificant soldier, standing before gods and cosmic entities without flinching. The Silent King speaks of adaptation and unique capabilities, as if we are experiments in some great pattern. But we are not experiments. We are people. We hurt, we fear, we die. And none of that makes us better or stronger. It just makes us hurt and scared and dead. The Mon-Ki speaks wisdom, Eldrad said quietly. We Eldar pursued perfection and birthed a god of excess. The Imperium pursues strength and creates tyrants. The lesson of suffering is not that it makes us better. The lesson is that suffering for its own sake has no meaning. Khorne laughed, the sound drowning out stars. Then you admit meaninglessness. You confess that your struggles achieve nothing. Why should the Tribunal preserve purposeless suffering? Because we still choose to exist. The guardsman replied, that is the meaning. Not that our suffering teaches us or improves us, but that despite everything, we still choose to live, to fight, to hope that tomorrow might be better than today. The Chaos Gods pressed their assault again, but this time differently. They showed visions, forcing them into the minds of everyone present. Futures where the Tribunal granted mercy. In every vision, the galaxy continued its endless war. In some, humanity fell to chaos, corruption despite the Emperor's sacrifice. In others, the Tyranids consumed all biomass. In still others, the Necrons awakened fully and exterminated all organic life. Every possible future showed more suffering, more death, more pointless struggle. You see, Siench whispered, all paths lead to ruin. Mercy now only delays the inevitable. Better to end this reality cleanly, quickly, than to allow countless more trillions to be born into suffering. Unless, Slaanesh added with terrible gentleness, you allow us to reshape this reality properly. Let us show these mortals the pleasure that can come from accepting chaos. Let them experience existence without the burden of resisting us. They will suffer less if they simply surrender. Or, Nurgle offered, accept the natural decay of all things. Stop fighting entropy. Let death come gently, rather than through endless war. We could make their endings peaceful. Or, Khorne's voice shook reality itself. Acknowledge that this galaxy exists for war. Embrace it. Let us guide them to honorable combat, rather than desperate survival. There is glory in battle when fought for its own sake rather than from terror. The Chaos Gods were offering a bargain, each in their own way. They could not attack the living Tribunal directly, but they could negotiate. They could offer to improve the galaxy in exchange for being allowed to remain. It was seduction on a cosmic scale, attempting to convince the judge that allowing chaos to rule openly would be more merciful than the current state of eternal struggle. The living Tribunal considered, its three visible faces conferring silently. The void of the fourth side pulsed with incomprehensible patterns. When it spoke, its words caused even the Chaos Gods to hesitate. Your offer reveals your fear. You sense that we can erase you despite your claims of inevitability. You seek to negotiate because you understand that your existence hangs in balance. This is noted. The silver face blazed brighter. You claim to be necessary, to serve function, but we observe that every argument presented describes not what you are, but what you prevent through your existence. You are not solution. You are problem that forces solution. The galaxy does not need you. It needs the pressure you create. These are not equivalent. The golden face spoke next. However, erasure through total annihilation of sapience introduces a logical contradiction within the principles we enforce. Destroying all consciousness to eliminate entities born from consciousness would violate the same cosmic laws we exist to uphold. Finally, the dark face spoke for only the second time, its voice like the absence of sound. The choice is not binary. There exists a third option that has not been considered. The living tribunal's three visible faces turned toward each other, and for the first time, the representatives from across the galaxy understood that they were witnessing something rare. A cosmic entity deliberating with itself, weighing options that would determine the fate of trillions. The void of the fourth side expanded, then contracted, as if breathing. When the tribunal spoke again, its words carried finality. We have reached decision. But first, you will answer one question, and your response will determine which verdict we render. The platform fell silent. Every being present, from the chaos gods to the lowliest guardsmen, waited for the question that would determine their fate. The living tribunal asked, "Do you wish to exist in suffering or not exist at all?" The question echoed across the galaxy simultaneously, reaching into every mind capable of comprehension. From the golden halls of Terra to the twisted depths of Camorra, from the tomb worlds of the Necrons to the craft worlds of the Eldar, from the orbital cities of the Tau to the fungal spawning grounds of the Orcs, every sapient being heard the living tribunal's question pressed directly into their consciousness. Do you wish to exist in suffering or not exist at all? It was not rhetorical. The tribunal waited, measuring responses across billions of worlds, trillions of minds. Each being had to choose individually, consciously. Ignorance was not permitted. Understanding was forced upon them along with the question. They saw what accepting existence meant. More war, more death, more struggle without guaranteed victory. They also saw what refusing meant. Instant, painless cessation, not just of themselves but of their entire reality, erased as cleanly as wiping marks from a slate. On Terra, in the depths of hive cities where workers had never seen the sun, they chose existence. In the Schola Progenium, where children trained to become Imperial officers, they chose existence. In the black ships, where psychers faced almost certain death, they chose existence. Across 1,000,000 worlds, humanity answered with defiant voices. We choose to live. The Eldar, who had lived for millennia with Slaaneish's hunger gnawing at their souls, who faced eternal torment upon death if their spirit stones failed, they too chose existence. Even the Dark Eldar, sustained only through torture and suffering, preferred their agonizing continuation to oblivion. The Tau, young and idealistic, chose existence without hesitation. The Orcs, who lived for fighting, roared their approval of continued existence. Even the Tyranid hive mind, alien and incomprehensible, transmitted something that registered as a desire to continue. From the Necron tomb worlds, the response was slower, but no less definitive. Beings who had already died once and been imprisoned in metal bodies for 60 million years still chose existence over true oblivion. The Silent King's voice resonated across his empire. We have endured too much to surrender now. The responses came in a wave, a tsunami of voices declaring their choice. Out of trillions upon trillions of sapient minds, 94% chose existence, 6% chose oblivion, and the living tribunal granted their wish. Across the galaxy, 6% of all sapient beings simply ceased. Not violently, not painfully. They were there, and then they were not, their choice honored without judgment. The loss was staggering in absolute numbers, billions upon billions simply gone. Yet those who remained felt something they had rarely experienced in this brutal galaxy. Their choice had been respected. A cosmic entity had asked their preference and honored it, even when that preference was death. The living tribunal's three visible faces regarded the remaining consciousness with something that might have been respect. The void of the fourth side pulsed once, as if acknowledging what had transpired. You have chosen. 94% of sapient minds in this reality prefer existence despite full knowledge of what that existence entails. This is unprecedented in our experience. Most realities choose oblivion when given the option to escape suffering. Your defiance is noted. Then you will spare us? Kovash asked, hardly daring to hope. The Tribunal's response crushed that hope immediately. Your choice affects the verdict but does not determine it. You have demonstrated that you value existence. This does not prove that your existence should be valued by cosmic law. The judgment proceeds. Before anyone could protest, the Chaos Gods manifested their final gambit. The four entities, who had never truly cooperated in their eternal existence, spoke with one voice. It was wrong, fundamentally disturbing, like watching four different songs merge into a single chord that hurt to hear. We offer a covenant, they said together. Bind us to this galaxy alone. We will never spread beyond it. We will limit our reach, constrain our influence. Let this universe remain our domain, and we will ensure no other reality is threatened by our existence. It was a staggering offer. The Chaos Gods volunteering to cage themselves, to accept restriction of their power. The desperation behind it was obvious. They had realized what the living tribunal could do, had felt the touch of true erasure when their earlier attacks were simply deleted from reality. For entities sustained by mortal emotion, the terror was genuine. The tribunal considered this. Your offer has merit. Quarantine of this reality would protect the greater multiverse from your corruption. However, it does not address the suffering of those within the quarantine. They would still endure your predations. Then allow us to make another offer, came a new voice. Not from the Chaos Gods, but from Terra itself. The Emperor's consciousness, strained beyond all previous limits, reached across the galaxy one more time. His words came with terrible cost. On the Golden Throne, the systems maintaining his body began to fail. Tech priests scrambled to compensate. But everyone knew this would be his final statement. Grant me my death, the Emperor said, each word purchased with the extinguishing of a portion of his vast consciousness. Free me from this throne. Let humanity face its future without my guidance, without my protection. If we fall to chaos without me, then we were never worthy of preservation. If we rise, if we find a way to survive, and perhaps even thrive, then we will have earned our continued existence. The offer shocked everyone present. The Imperium existed because of the Emperor. His sacrifice maintained the Astronomicon, allowing warp travel. His psychic might held back the worst of Chaos's assaults. His mere existence gave purpose to trillions who fought in his name. Without him, the Imperium would collapse within years, perhaps months. You cannot, Kovash whispered. My lord, without you, humanity falls. Perhaps, the Emperor replied. But continued existence through my eternal suffering proves the Tribunal's point. I have become the very thing I fought against. A god demanding sacrifice to sustain an empire built on fear. If humanity cannot survive without me, then perhaps it does not deserve to survive. The Chaos Gods laughed, sensing opportunity. Yes, Khorne roared. Let the corpse god die. Let his empire crumble. We will feast on the resulting despair. You misunderstand, the Emperor said. My offer includes a condition. Living Tribunal, if you grant humanity this chance, this test of our ability to evolve beyond dependence on my power, then you must also bind the Chaos Gods as they offered. Seal this galaxy. Let no dimensional travel cross its boundaries. Give us 10,000 years to prove we can change. 10,000 years, Sench mused. An entire epoch. So much can change in such time. We accept this bargain. As do we, Nurgle added. Growth requires time, even if that growth is decay. The challenge appeals, Khorne agreed. Will they grow stronger without their god, or weaker? Either way, Slaanesh concluded, the outcome will be exquisite. The living tribunal's three visible faces turned toward each other, conferring The void of the fourth side expanded to encompass them all for a moment, as if examining each soul present. The platform existed in silence for long moments. Then the verdict came, delivered with absolute finality. This universe violates cosmic law. Its continued existence threatens multiversal stability. By all precedent, by all previous judgments across infinite realities, it should be erased immediately and completely. Every being present felt their hearts stop. This was it, the end. However, that single word carried more weight than planets, more significance than the death of stars. We observe unprecedented phenomenon, consciousness that chooses suffering over oblivion, life that fights despite certainty of eventual defeat, hope maintained without foundation or evidence, sacrifice offered not from fear, but from belief in potential for improvement. These qualities violate predictable patterns. They suggest possibility we had not considered, that suffering itself might be catalyst for evolution beyond our capacity to predict. The golden face spoke next. Therefore, we render the following verdict. This universe is found guilty of violations against cosmic law. However, sentence is suspended pending demonstration of rehabilitation. The terms are as follows. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath as the living tribunal pronounced the conditions of their continued existence. First, this universe is quarantined. All dimensional boundaries are sealed. No travel in or out. No influence from other realities. No spread of corruption beyond this galaxy's borders. This seal will remain for 10,000 standard years. Kovash felt a shiver run through reality as the seal took effect. Every psyker in the galaxy experienced it simultaneously, the sudden absence of anything beyond their universe. They were alone, truly isolated. Second, the entities known as Chaos Gods are bound to this galaxy alone. Their influence may not extend beyond its borders. Their consciousness may not seek other realities. They exist now solely within this quarantine. Violation means immediate erasure. The Chaos Gods shrieked in rage and frustration, but the binding held. The living tribunal's power exceeded even theirs. They were trapped, caged by cosmic law itself. Third, the entity known as the Emperor of Mankind will be granted release from the Golden Throne. No! The cry came from 1,000 throats simultaneously. The Custodes, the Tech Priests, the High Lords, all protested at once. Without the Emperor, the Astronomicon would fail. Without the Astronomicon, warp travel would become impossible. Without warp travel, the Imperium would fragment into isolated systems, unable to coordinate defense against countless threats. The Emperor's consciousness pulsed with something that might have been satisfaction or might have been sorrow. The bargain is struck, he said. I have guided humanity for 40,000 years. I have fought its battles, made its decisions, borne its burdens. Now they must learn to walk without me. But how? Kovash demanded. How do we navigate the warp without the Astronomicon? How do we maintain the Imperium without your guidance? You will learn, the living tribunal stated simply, or you will fall. That is the nature of the test. Fourth, and finally, at the end of 10,000 years, we will return. You will present evidence of progress, of evolution, of improvement over your current state. If you demonstrate meaningful change, the quarantine will be lifted, and your universe permitted to continue indefinitely. If you demonstrate stagnation or regression, erasure will be immediate and absolute. The terms were harsh, but not impossible. 10,000 years was a long time, even for the Imperium. Entire ages could rise and fall in that span. Humanity had gone from crude atomic weapons to galactic empire in less time. Perhaps they could evolve beyond their current brutal necessities. These terms are non-negotiable, the living tribunal concluded. Do you accept this judgment? We accept, the Emperor said immediately. Release me. We accept, Eldrad said for the Eldar. We will endure. We accept. The Tau, Ethereal agreed. The greater good will prevail. Even the Silent King inclined his head. We accept. We have waited 60 million years. 10,000 more is nothing. The Chaos Gods had no choice. They were bound by the Tribunal's power whether they accepted or not. But Khorne laughed, a sound of anticipation rather than rage. Let the games begin. 10,000 years to corrupt, to conquer, to prove that chaos is the only truth. Then, it is decided. The living Tribunal raised one hand, and reality bent to its will. On Terra, the mechanisms of the Golden Throne began to shut down. The Emperor, who had sat immobile for 10 millennia, felt his connection to his withered body finally severing. His consciousness, no longer anchored to rotting flesh, expanded one final time, and in that expansion, he did something impossible. He divided himself. Not splitting into fragments, but creating echoes, impressions of his power and knowledge scattered across the galaxy. In every major world, in every sector command, in the mind of every loyal servant, he left a piece of himself. Not enough to replace him, but enough to guide, to inspire, to provide the foundation upon which humanity might build its future. I am not abandoning you, his voice echoed across the Imperium one last time. I am trusting you to become what I always believed you could be, greater than any single being, even one as powerful as I. You will stumble, you will fall, but you will rise again, or you will prove that I was wrong to have faith in humanity's potential. The Golden Throne went dark. The Astronomicon flickered and died. Across the galaxy, navigators screamed as their primary reference point vanished. Ships in transit emerged from the warp at random locations, some successfully, others lost forever in the Imperium. The careful network of communication and coordination that had held the Imperium together for 10,000 years shattered in an instant. Chaos reigned, but not the chaos of the ruinous powers. This was the chaos of sudden change, of forced adaptation. Every world, every system, every sector had to decide immediately how they would survive without the Emperor's light to guide them. The living Tribunal watched this upheaval with its 3 visible faces, measuring, judging, recording. The void of the fourth side seemed to nod once in acknowledgement. Then, as suddenly as it had arrived, it began to withdraw. The 3 visible faces faded, reality healing in their wake. But before it departed completely, it spoke one final time, its words echoing in the minds of every sapient being in the galaxy. You have been judged. You have been found wanting. You have been granted mercy you did not earn and do not deserve. The question now is simple. What will you do with this gift of time? Will you use these 10,000 years to evolve beyond your current brutality? Or will you prove that our initial judgment was correct, that this universe deserves only erasure? We will return. Show us we were wrong to offer mercy, or show us that even the darkest crucible can forge something worthy of preservation. The choice, for the first time in your history, is entirely yours. The living Tribunal vanished, leaving behind a galaxy in chaos, but also a galaxy with something it had never truly possessed before. A part, deadline with meaning, a purpose beyond mere survival. They had 10,000 years to change or die. On Terra, Kovash stood in the throne room, staring at the now silent Golden Throne. Around him, tech priests wept, their faith shattered by the loss of their god. Custodes stood frozen, their purpose suddenly unclear. The High Lords argued in panicked voices about succession, about maintaining order, about preventing the Imperium's immediate collapse. But Kovash felt something unexpected stirring in his chest. Hope. Real hope. Not the desperate prayer to an uncaring god, but actual belief that perhaps, just perhaps, humanity could rise to this challenge. They would stumble. They would suffer. Many would die in the transition. But for the first time in 10,000 years, their suffering had clear purpose. They were working towards something, not just fighting to maintain the status quo. Eldrad, aboard his craft world, felt the same unexpected emotion. The Eldar had lived for millennia, in the shadow of their own mistakes, their entire civilization defined by the trauma of the fall. Now they had a chance, a real chance, to become something more than survivors haunted by past sins. Across the galaxy, species looked up at stars that seemed somehow brighter despite the absence of the Astronomicon. The Chaos Gods, bound and limited, raged in their realm but also schemed. 10,000 years was a long time even for them. New strategies, new approaches, new ways to corrupt and conquer without violating the terms of their binding. The Silent King activated ancient protocols, awakening more of his tomb worlds. The Necrons had a role to play in this new age, though what that role would be remained to be seen. And in the warp, in the spaces between spaces, something stirred that had been dormant for ages. The Emperor's divided consciousness, no longer bound to a failing body, began to coalesce in new forms. Not as a god, but as inspiration, as guidance, as the potential for humanity to finally become the species he had always believed they could be. The countdown had begun. 10,000 years to prove that a galaxy built on suffering could evolve into something better, or 10,000 years until the living Tribunal returned to erase a failed experiment. In the grim darkness of the far future, there was still war, but now that war had purpose beyond perpetuation. Every battle fought, every life saved, every small act of compassion or courage contributed to a larger goal, proving that even the darkest universe could contain light. That even the most brutal crucible could forge something worthy of cosmic preservation. The trial was over. The sentence was pronounced. The test had begun. And for the first time in 40,000 years, the galaxy faced its future with something approaching genuine hope that tomorrow might actually be better than today.